Hey, I see David Baxter.
Hi
Can
there,
I hear
live
David?
from the apocalypse. Live.
Woohoo! We're all on. Thank you, Taylor, for counting us down. That was like the most professional way to enter an AMA live stream that we have ever had here at Legion M. Nice job.
No, no doubt. We have a little bit of a lag between us, so
Yeah, that was
excuse us
expected
if
though.
there's a little crossover.
Yeah, we're coming at you from two very different parts of the world, Los Angeles and just outside of Los Angeles. So, and I see that my feed is a little pixelated. That was not happening previously, but I think it's going to be okay. This is how I always look. So the reason why David and I decided to do an AMA tonight is because we get questions all the time in email and social media where people are asking questions about how to break into the industry, or more specific questions about, if it's all about who you know, how do you meet people, things like that. And in this downtime that everybody's having, those questions are starting to increase. So we thought it would be a great idea to take this moment to answer some of those questions. And if you have any questions, go ahead and post them. I think we're live on Twitch. So post them in the Twitch stream. I'm sure there are other places where you can post them, which Taylor can probably let us know about. But we'll try to answer all of your questions. You have David and I for an hour. We took some of the most pressing questions that we found online and went ahead and wrote them out in a little document so we can just get started while we're waiting for your burning questions. But this isn't Ask Us Anything. So some people want to know about, what it takes to be a screenwriter. Other people want to know, what does it take to be an executive in Hollywood? And still others want to know, what's it like reading scripts all day for a living? So we're happy to answer any question. Don't be shy. This is your chance to, I don't know. David, is that your natural hair color?
Uh, no, my natural hair color would just be all white, just a very ancient old wizard type. That's me.
Well, it looks great. Um, so the first question that we had was, how do I find auditions? I'm sure that was sent to us by an actor. Um, Unfortunately, David and I came up through the industry as an actor, but I haven't actually been an actor for over 20 years. So my perspective on that is from a producer's point of view. Um, so I'll preface everything I'm going to say with, I have information on this, but it's stale. But as a producer, I can tell you what I would recommend and as someone who used to represent actors, I can tell you what I would recommend. And David, I'm sure you kind of have the same point of view as I do.
Sure.
So if you don't have an agent or a manager, the way to find, there are lots of different ways to find auditions. This industry is very much who you know. And the more you're out there meeting people and letting people know that you are an actor and that you're a professional and that you take your craft seriously, the more opportunities will open up to you. The one thing that always surprises me is how many people say, oh, I'm an actor, or I want to be an actor, and they've never taken an acting class in their lives, or they've done theater in high school and haven't continued to study their craft after high school, even though they want to be a professional actor. The thing about the entertainment industry is it looks fun and it looks glamorous, but it really is a business and it is a profession. And the people that are hiring, whether you're an actor or person on crew or whatever, we expect the people that we're hiring to know how to do their jobs. So everything from, blocking a scene and nailing the dialogue to, asking a director the right questions about your character, when you're in rehearsal, all of those types of things are telltale ways to find out who's a professional and who's not. So my first recommendation would be take as many acting classes as you can. Oftentimes those acting classes will help you find auditions, and they will teach you how to find auditions, and they will teach you to audition. In fact, there are lots of acting classes out there that are specifically geared to teaching you how to nail auditions. And those are excellent classes to take. And a lot of colleges, you know, I was an acting major in college. We did not have an audition class. It would have been something that I would have really enjoyed having. So if you're in college studying acting and you don't have that class available to you, go out and find one. I think the other good thing to know about is, I think this is still a thing. David, tell me if I'm wrong. Backstage, is Backstage still a thing?
Still a thing. And yeah, one of the things that's really, really important to do as an actor is to be aware of what films are going to be going into production, what films are going to be starting up, getting a subscription to Internet Movie Database Pro, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline. You need to those things need to become part of your daily homework. It's incumbent upon you guys to know what's going on out there. And you can literally track down who the casting directors are. And I know it can be very frustrating, and it may take, 100 different calls, but at some point, if you have the right resume, somebody will just say, okay, come on in. I know there's that catch-22 of, unless I have an agent, how can I possibly get, any kind of recognition? How can I get anybody to listen to me? I think Terri's earlier comment about going to, if you can, a credible acting school. Obviously, that's much easier for people in New York or Los Angeles, just because that's where a lot of the business is. But increasingly, there are more and more acting classes, even online. There are these master classes, and you can communicate with the people who run them, and they can give you clues, they can give you advice on where to go. Obviously, as she said, this is not, our expertise in particular. But when we're casting roles and when we're thinking about these things, we're trying to find out all the actors who sort of fit our image in our head. We're going through the Internet Movie Database. We're seeing the different things that they've been involved in. So, I think you just need to act. You need to find ways. If you can't be in a movie, be in a play. Be constantly exercising the muscle of acting.
So I mentioned Backstage. That's a really good resource for people who want to find auditions. It's backstage.com. And it's a website that will allow you to find auditions and submit yourself. You need to become really good at self-taping. In fact, when we were going to do our Evermore table read before coronavirus hit, we were asking people who wanted to participate in our table read to self-tape their audition. So that's something, again, either figure out how to do it yourself or find a class on how to do it. But it's something that most casting directors will expect, is for you to put yourself on tape with the material that they send you and nail it and send that into them, and then they'll take a look at that. So I think that's probably on acting.
Can I add just to that for a second? So in terms of doing that and of taping yourself, there are all kinds of little things like this, which is just like a clip-on lamp that you can put in front of yourself if you're doing some kind of reading. If you're taping yourself on your computer, you really want to try to put your best foot forward when you're doing these taped auditions. So be sure that you've got proper lighting. It doesn't have to be expensive, but just make sure you've got a light and they can see you and they can hear you well. having a good mic is a very helpful thing. That's all that I wanted to add.
Great. So the next question is similar, but it's about how to find crew jobs. So again, it's a lot about who you know. And if you are local, let's say you live in Madison, Wisconsin, and you're hoping to find crew jobs around the area of Madison, Wisconsin. Some of the best ways for you to network and find crew jobs locally is to just get to know the filmmakers in your area. So it's going to local film festivals. It is joining, if there's a film board or a group, or let's say that your Chamber of Commerce has a film division. It really is all about networking. There are apps and websites online that match crew with jobs. One that I can think of right now is Cinematcher. Cinematcher, which our friend Lauren Magora runs. And that's one of the things they do. They look for local crew. So you can get on a website like that, upload your resume, tell people where you want to work and what your expertise is, and go from there. Every once in a while, if you're scouring the internet, you can find, if you're an entry-level crew member, you can find entry-level positions, whether it's an internship or PA position. PA means production assistant. And, no job is too small to start with. My first job in entertainment, I was an intern for a production designer. And I knew I was never going to be a production designer, but I also knew I wanted to get on set and meet the director and meet the producers and meet all the actors and find out what they were doing and how to do it. And I parlayed that internship, where I was only allowed to go to set like twice, into a stand-in position and then an extra position. And then that job turned into another job where I was a PA. It just goes on and on. So just remember, every job that you have in entertainment is an audition for your next job. Ask lots of questions, make a fabulous impression, keep in touch with people, not in a pestery type of way, but every 6 months, ping the people that you worked with on your last movie and say, hey, this is what I've been doing for 6 months. I'm available. Let me know if you have anything that I can be helpful with.
I would say that the other thing that you can do is, if you have a particular skill that's unusual, that can be a way in. The way that I got started in the entertainment industry was that I was training for the Olympics as a fencer. And one day after fencing practice, I went to a bar to meet up with some college friends from the University of Michigan. And there was a woman who saw my fencing bag and said, "Are you a fencer?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, my company's making a movie about fencing." I said, "Modern fencing?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Do you guys know anything about modern fencing?" And she said, "Not really." And I said, "Well, look, I'd love to, if I can help in any way. I work, I do marketing for the United States Fencing Association." Next thing I know, I met the producer who hired me on the spot. And then within a few weeks, I was actually helping train Eric Roberts, Julia Roberts' brother, and F. Murray Abraham, along with my Olympic coach. So you just never know how it's going to happen. But if there's something that you can bring to the party, that will help. That will definitely help.
Okay, I'm now seeing that we have questions flowing in. So we have 45 minutes left and about 20 more questions. So I'm going to run through these as quickly as we can and leave time at the end, because I know some other questions will come in. How to submit ideas and scripts. So I guess there are two parts of that question. One is, how do you submit them to Legion M, which we've talked about on other AMAs and other live streams. And the answer to that right now is that we would love to read every single script or idea that comes in. We don't have the ability to do that, so we are not open for general submissions. But we have programs to allow people, every once in a while we'll open up something like Pitch Elevator, which allows people to pitch a project to us, and then we're able to use the power of the Legion to decide if that's a project that we want to move forward on. And every once in a while, people will post something in Facebook or on social, and other people will glom on and say, oh, we love this idea. Trust me, David and I read everything. We hear everything. So if you're posting an idea, I promise you we're looking at it. It is not going to be ignored. So how to submit ideas and scripts to producers, agents, managers in general. If you're starting out as a new writer or producer, it's all about who you know. And sometimes it's hard to get people to read your material. I think my secret ingredient for new baby writers and producers is that if your script, if your screenplay has won an award or been shortlisted to be a finalist for an award or a screenplay competition, that is the best way to get read. There are other websites out there that are helpful, like Slated, slated.com, which works with producers that are looking for financing. That's another way to get noticed. David, jump in here at any moment. I know we have a lag, so I want to take a breath.
No, it's okay. There's actually there are several sites that list all of the various screenplay competitions. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Essentially, what happens is when you start submitting to these competitions and you get singled out, it really makes it much easier for us to be able to take a look at things, because otherwise there are all kinds of legal ramifications to our looking at material, which is one of the reasons why generally you need to have an agent. It's a catch-22 for people who are starting out. The entering into competitions is the way around it, and I highly recommend that. Just Google screenplay competitions, and you'll get a very large list of them, and that I think is the best way to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, and some of the ones that are particularly good are ones like the Nichols Fellowship. Final Draft has a great screenplay competition. I think any really well-known film festival is a great place for you to submit your script. And in fact, Girl with No Name won the Slam Dance screenwriting competition. So that's a great example of a writer who won a competition who ended up selling his script.
Terri?
The other thing to think about if you're, yeah?
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't know if this still goes on, but with the blacklist, that was another way that if you submitted to the blacklist and you were in the top, I believe, 2%, they would actually contact the agencies on your behalf if it was a very, very well-reviewed screenplay. I don't know if that still is happening.
Yeah, every agent worth their salt gets that blacklist and reads all of the scripts. Another thing to do is, especially if you're interested in television, most of the networks and studios have programs where they are incubating new writing talent. And if you just go, for example, yes, exactly. David, you want to talk about that?
Sure. So there are studios like Warner Brothers that want to help people who are starting out, and they also want to promote diversity. And Warner 150, if you Google that, you'll find it. That's a perfect example of that kind of incubator, which can help people who are just getting started.
And all the studios have writing fellowships, also.
Yes,
including like Walt Disney Television. Yeah. Sorry, our lag is getting to us now. That's so funny.
Go ahead, Terri.
Oh, I was just saying all the studios have fellowships. So you should go online, find out what's required for those fellowships. Usually you have to have written a television series that is on the air, and done a really good job writing that spec script, and then send it in. Oftentimes people get rejected several years in a row before they're finally accepted. And different fellowships have different criteria. So it's good to familiarize yourself with that. And I just recommend, don't be afraid to apply and get rejected. This whole business is about rejection and how you handle it. Just keep going. Persistence will pay off.
Absolutely agree with that. This reminded me, this goes back to an earlier question on how to find jobs as crew. All of the guilds have training, I believe, to have training programs. DGA in particular has a training program if you want to become a first AD, and you take an exam. And these are great ways to get in, because if you pass the exam, they actually put you on the set. So you should go to the Writers Guild, go to their website, and familiarize yourself with them and see if there's any programs. Sometimes they have panels that are open to the public, and it is always a great thing if you want to be a writer to go and meet working writers. And I'm a member of the WGA, and I got to tell you, some of my best and my best experiences have been speaking with more seasoned writers. I've learned a lot, and sometimes they can help you. This is a business of networking. The more people that you know, the better. And as Terri said, as long as you're not overly aggressive, generally people, as they move up in the industry, want to give back, and they want to help others who are trying to make their way up there.
Yep. Okay, next question. How to find funding for your project? That is such a good question, and we could probably have a master class on this subject. And I got to tell you, I've been in this business for over 25 years, and there are still things that I learn depending on who I'm working with, because there are so many ways to fund a project. So I'm going to assume that question was talking about independent film financing. Because if you're talking about studio or television, you're usually getting funded through a corporation. The way to put together independent feature film is so creative and so varied. There are an infinite number of puzzle pieces that can be put together in an infinite number of ways. And it's everything from finding 10 dentists who each have $25,000 and want to be a named producer on your movie, to finding a domestic distributor who will give you a minimum guarantee before you even start shooting. My recommendation is that you research and read books and read articles about film financing so you can familiarize yourself with the terminology. The terminology itself is like understanding a foreign language. So when people are talking about pre-sales and MGs and North American rights and points and all of these types of things, you at least know what people are talking about. And I'll give you just a very quick example. A friend of mine who is a director and a writer called me yesterday and said, well, I have this $3 million movie, but I only have $1.5 million in cash to shoot it. And I was like, what are you talking about? You only have $1.5 million in cash. That's a go movie. If you shoot it in Georgia or Louisiana, where you have great tax credits, we'll put, a sales agent on that, and then we'll go find an MG for domestic distribution. You're done. So it's learning how those pieces fit together and how you can capitalize, if you have a little bit of money, how you can turn that into a lot more money to be able to actually shoot your film. That was not an easy answer. David, do you have anything else on that one?
You covered it. I'd say you just there are a million ways to get things financed. There's the old, hey, if you can get an actor attached. Generally speaking, the more value that you can bring um, in before you look for the money, the better. The other thing is to make really good presentations. I know this is going to sound sort of simplistic, but if you can put together a really nice package that's very professional, um, you're going to get people to with you. Everybody will judge you on their materials.
Yeah. So it can't just be about the screenplay. These days, people want to see the screenplay, the budget. They want a deck, which is like a presentation in, PowerPoint that kind of outlines what the vision for the project is and what the director's vision might be in a lookbook. That's such a good point, David.
Well, and you can Google this, guys. You can actually find examples out there. So just Google film financing deck. I think you'll find some good stuff.
Yeah. And there's some good stuff. I mean, we look at the Stranger Things deck often, for example.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Really which is a great example. Okay, so Boots Miller on Facebook asks, is it easier to write a short story or a screenplay? David, you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you define easier. I mean, they're two entirely different animals. Short stories, I mean, you have to think about when you start to write anything, you have to start thinking about who your audience is or who you'd like your audience to be. The great thing about short stories is that you can use internal narrative. So you can talk about what somebody's thinking or feeling, where with a screenplay, it's really incumbent upon you to be able to convey those things, but only with dialogue and action. And I sometimes feel that when people first start writing, especially if they read a lot of books, they tend to do a lot of commentary in the action sections, which really should not be. And a lot of people, even make jokes and asides and different things. I'm not a huge fan of that. Some writers are, but I would say it's equally difficult to write either of them. The key is to write them well. Whatever you're going to do, put the time and the effort, know your characters, understand their motivations. That is true in both short story writing and in screenplay writing. Is that helpful?
Sounds helpful to me. I think if you're thinking of this from the point of view of, I have a great idea and I think it would make a great movie, the script is always going to be king. And you will have more power as an artist and as a writer if you have written a script rather than a short story. So if you're deciding on, do I write the short story or do I write the screenplay? If the purpose is to turn it into a film or a television show someday, you should go ahead and write the screenplay or the teleplay. You should just do it. I think you will get more traction and you will have more options long-term if you do it that way. Okay, Boots, I hope we answered your question. Let us know if we didn't. We'll be happy to do a follow-up. Neil Cap is watching. Neil Cap is asking, it's going to be a rough road for funding on the backside of this pandemic. Any chance of partnering with a 501c3 in order to provide Legion M and its members an avenue to apply for filmmaking grants for projects? That is a really good question. Well, Neil, it's not something I've looked into. I know there are a lot of film companies out there who are starting to establish funds for furloughed employees and unemployed and underemployed crew members and actors and things like that. But I just haven't looked into this yet. David, have you heard anything about that?
Not yet. I think everybody is so so involved right now in adjusting their business plans to try to accommodate the new reality. But the problem is the new reality keeps changing every single day. Um, you know, as time goes on, I think we'll be exploring a lot of different ways to get our projects done. And, maybe we can get back to you, in a, in a month or so once things have either settled down or a path is a little bit clearer moving forward.
Yeah. I think one of the major issues right now is that even if you have a project, you cannot shoot it. I mean, nobody is putting crews together and shooting movies right now. So it's a little uncertain for the short term. So Neil, I hope we answered your question. Let us know if you have a follow-up. Thunder 11 on. Thunder, thank you so much for joining us. Thunder is actually a professional writer. He is the guy who brought us all Sharknado, one of my favorite movies ever, and is one of my favorite writers in the business. And he suggested that we talk about inktip.com, which is another way that writers can get their log lines for their screenplays into kind of a newsletter that goes out to producers on a weekly basis. So inktip.com,
great circulation.
Yeah, it has great circulation. The last company I ran where we had a deal at a studio, and that was Paramount in the, it was in the 2007, 2008 era, where we used Inktip. We actually did use it to find projects. I have not worked at a company since then that has used it, just because the internet has become such a place of, it's a place where there's so many resources. I haven't needed to use it, but I know a lot of producers still read Inktip. David, do you have any insight into that also?
I mean, I haven't gotten a movie made using Inktip, but I know a lot of people, like it because it's just great to have sort of one place to go to look for ideas, and to be able to match producers with writers is always a good move. I mean, Slated is very, kind of, this Inktip sort of reminds me of Slated in this regard. So no, I would recommend it. I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you've got scripts, you need to get them out there, and any resource that you can find, as long as it's credible, be careful of people making big promises. Always double check and triple check. Try to find somebody who's actually used the service before you dive in. But otherwise, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, Inktip does a very nice job of getting their lists out to producers. Even though I personally don't use it, if I was actively looking for material and unable to get quality screenplays, it would be a resource that I would turn to first. Okay, so Leisha Davis on Facebook. Hi, Leisha. Hope you're okay.
Hi,
I know you're working on the front lines. Thank you for joining us tonight. And hopefully you're staying safe. Leisha is asking, are there any software programs or online resources to help write screenplays? I have a favorite. I'm sure David has a favorite. I use Final Draft. David, are you a Final Draft user also?
I've been a Final Draft user from the very beginning. I was one of the original beta testers on it. Yeah. Final Draft, I think, overall may do the best job, but there are other software packages that are out there, and at the end of the day, as long as you know the formatting, you can use good old Microsoft Word. There's no screenwriting software program that's going to write the script for you. There are some story structure softwares out, like Save the Cat, that can help you kind of put things in an order that will enable you to sort of figure out how you want to move forward. But industry standard is pretty much final draft, I'd say.
I actually don't know anyone who doesn't use Final Draft. And I would say it's worth the investment. If you're serious about writing a screenplay and you want to show it professionally, you should invest in Final Draft.
I have a funny story about screenwriting software.
Well, I don't know, David. It's 5:35 and we still have 15 more questions.
I'll save it for another day.
Can we come back to it? Okay, we'll come back to it. So someone asks, specific to Legion M, I've seen some people ask what the process is in terms of deciding on a project. Jeff and Paul actually talk about this quite often when they do their deep dives. Very, very high level. Jeff and Paul and David and I and the entire team, Mandy and Taylor, Michelle, Danielle, everybody, we are constantly, and Terry and Claire, I don't want to leave anybody out. We are constantly trying to find ways to ask our members and investors what they want us to be looking for, the kinds of projects that they're most excited about. You know, we have tools like Impulse and Film Scout to get data to help inform our decisions. So, you know, for example, we did an Impulse a year and a half ago and asked, you know, what directors would you like us to work with? And overwhelmingly, people voted Kevin Smith. So we took that as our marching orders and went to Kevin Smith and said, you've been so great to us. How can we help you? And that's how Jay and Silent Bob came to be. That's how our involvement in Jay and Silent Bob came to be. So in terms of deciding on actual projects, let's say, you know, our marching orders, for example, are to find a fantasy, which an Impulse came back and said, we'd like you to do a fantasy. So David and I sit down and say, okay, so here are all the fantasy projects that are available that we should be considering. And then we figure out which ones would fit best into today's marketplace and how to put that together. And then we package it and see if it gets the kind of traction that we think it should get. And if it does, then we move forward with it. So that's kind of a very high level point of view, but it's a lot of steps to get from, hey, let's do a fantasy to here's a fantasy that we're doing, guys. But we definitely take into consideration our members and investors and what they want to do. And we take into consideration what's happening in the marketplace, and is that type of project, is that type of material viable at this time? David, you want to say more about that?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it. I guess the only thing I would say is there's nothing we would like more than to have projects that actually come out of the Legion community. And because that helps tell the story and the strength of the community. We do the best that we can with the information that we have. The other thing is that the marketplace can change very quickly. And even if you think you may have the best thing in the world, there may be another project that is close to it that has gotten farther along, and it can kill it. So there are a lot of factors that most people might not be aware of. I always feel bad, if I'm speaking to somebody and they're sure that they have like a most amazing new idea, and I have to tell them, well, actually, the studio's been working on this for 2 years. It's going to be coming out next year, and it's hard. It's hard, especially if you are working and spending a lot of time on a project, which is why, again, I highly recommend, especially if you're going to be doing like a public domain story, a historical story, you first do the research and find out what other projects are out there, because it's very hard to compete if you've got a major movie star in the same story that you want to tell on another project.
Yeah, great advice, David. Okay, so how and where to network to get positions like writer's assistant. And I think this also dovetails, there's another question a little later. I'm going to mess up your graphics, Taylor. This dovetails with how do you get an opportunity to network with people when you don't know anyone? So let's talk about networking first, David, and then we'll talk about getting positions like writer's assistant positions. And
Sure.
I'm asking David about
networking.
He's like the best
Go ahead.
at networking.
Oh, that's kind of you to say. I think I've just been around long enough, that if you live long enough, you will get to know everybody. The first thing that you need to know about networking is be nice to everybody, and that will pay you back in spades. You need to respect everybody who works in the business. Everybody is, trying the best they can to move their career forward. And like the Legion M community, the way that you do that is by helping each other, as opposed to trying to get in the way of each other. I think the greatest gift that one person can give somebody else is a belief in their own potential. And what you need to sort of do is you need to try to put yourself in front of people who are at the point in their career where they do want to give back. The way to do this is, again, get involved in whatever area that you're interested in. If you want to be a producer, go to the Producers Guild, find out what events are available to the public, talk to people. As a writer, I remember I went to see the McKee story structure course. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. And sitting next to me was this old-time Hollywood actor, Michael York, who was in Logan's Run and all of these Three Musketeers and things like this. I ended up having a wonderful relationship with this guy just by offering to give him my notes because he wasn't taking notes. And I just said, "Hey, would you like the notes?" And I got a phone call. He said from him a little later on saying, "Oh, David, would you mind if I gave your notes to Barbara Streisand?" Strange things happen. But the way to network is to go and see films and do things with people who are like-minded. Again, I apologize. This is much easier to do in New York and Los Angeles. One of the things, if you're interested in getting into the industry, you really might even want to sort of plan a vacation around networking in Hollywood. I know that may be crazy, but literally between the different film schools, AFI, USC, UCLA, the extension courses, if you can actually take some time and go to the places where movies get made, it can be absolutely invaluable. The people that you meet in school also are a great resource. I went to UCLA Film School, and the people in my graduate program I am friends with to this day, and they are an absolutely invaluable resource for me. And we all help each other, and we all cheer each other on. And that's a big part in entertainment. You need a lot of cheering on because, as Terri says, you have to get used to people turning you down, and you have to get used to not being emotionally connected to that is in some way about you, because the vast majority of the time when you are turned down, it is for factors that you have absolutely no control over.
Yeah. Some other recommendations that I always give to people are, especially if you're in New York or LA, there are organizations like the Hollywood Television and Radio Society that have all different kinds of memberships, whether you're a student or an associate or an executive, and you can kind of grow with it as you grow. I know for sure they have New York and LA. I don't know if they have any kind of middle of the country activities, but the PGA does. And you should definitely get involved in the PGA. Find a member who is in your local area and call them and say, "I'm really interested in this. Can you please take me to the next open event?" And the PGA has recruiting events often. where they'll ask a member to bring a prospective member. And you may not qualify yet to be in the PGA, but you can still possibly take advantage of the programs that they offer, including networking. Other wonderful organizations include organizations like Women in Film, which has chapters all over the country. Your local film commission, your state film commission, any local film festival or place where you can participate in entertainment of any kind, whether it's plays or TV or film. Those are all good ways to network. I think the moral of the networking story is find as many opportunities as you can to get out there and meet people. Oftentimes, even banks will hold networking opportunities for prospective clients who want to be in the entertainment industry, and they will connect people. Conferences, and these conferences are held all over the world. There's, conferences in Vegas and Milan and Miami and Chicago. Don't be afraid to sign up. A lot of times it's a lot of money. Maybe you just go hang at the hotel where they're having the conference and try to meet as many people as you can in the bar. It's a cheap and easy way to do it. So I hope that's helpful to people. Okay, so how do you get a position like a writer's assistant? Well, it's so funny. A friend of mine's a showrunner, and I asked him this very question on behalf of a brand new writer a couple of weeks ago, and he said, I'm the wrong person to ask. I did not come up traditionally in this industry. And so I thought, well, what is traditional? Traditionally, if you want to get a position as a writer's assistant in a writer's room, you go work at an agency or a management company on a television literary desk for an agent who represents showrunners. You do that for a couple of years. You get to know all their clients and then all the business, and then you ask a favor of your agent to say, can you please try to place me as an assistant with one of our clients? And that's how it traditionally happens. But there are lots of other ways that happens. Getting a fellowship from one of the studios, writing spec scripts and networking, using your alumni association. I mean, David mentioned UCLA. Any great film school will have people who are working writers in Hollywood who will need assistance. Don't be afraid to call your alumni association. Anywhere that you've ever had an internship, don't be afraid to call human resources there and say, hey, I'm looking for this specific type of job. Can you please consider me, or can you give me some advice? So that's my advice on that one.
Yeah, I would add to that. If you are in LA or New York, go over to the Writers Guild, go into the library or reading room. There will be a bulletin board, and literally put up a card saying, do you need an assistant? There will be writers who may need an assistant.
Yeah, and be prepared to work for not much money. A lot of work for not much money. You got to be ready for that lifestyle, and that you'll be out of work a lot. But if you're putting in your time, you'll grow your portfolio, and eventually, instead of being a writer's assistant, you'll be an actual writer on a show. Okay, someone asked, how do I get into pitch meetings? Again, there's no context to that question, so I'm going to assume people are saying, how do I pitch my project? I have a great idea. How do I pitch it? It's not so easy. Networks and studios are not just going to open their door and say, oh, you're a producer? Come on in. Let's hear your idea. It doesn't really work that way for legal reasons, and also just the sheer amount of work that they have to get through. David, were you going to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that, like the competitions for screenplay writing, there are actually pitch conferences where you can literally go in, stand up in front of everybody, and pitch. And usually they award, sort of the top pitchers an award, which gets people noticed. Again, you have to figure out a way to make yourself known.
And also partnering with other people who are already known is really smart. You know, some people have a project that they're like, it's mine. I don't want another partner. Which is kind of short-sighted, because without another partner, you're probably not going to get it made if you're not getting in the room. So finding a producer who can get into the room, or an actor or a director, and locking arms with that person, it's better to have 50% of something than 0% of nothing. So I think that's also a really great way to get into pitch rooms.
Absolutely.
So another question, how is the landscape different today than it was 10 or 20 years ago? What are some examples of things we do differently now than in the past? That is a very interesting question. Well, we do a lot of online, everything's online now. I don't print a script anymore. That's one thing that's really different.
Yeah, in the old days there was no digital. So you would have literally, I mean, as a development exec and as a reader, I would have stacks of scripts that were 6 feet high. You know, yeah, I mean, it was really kind of funny. I'd say that the biggest thing is that information is much more available to the public now than it was then. You know, before Internet Movie Database, you know, there were very, very few ways to kind of know what was going on, and the agencies were extremely powerful. There were also, you know, at different times over the past 30 years, the power of the producer, the writer, and the director and the talent shifted. You know, we're in a golden age right now of television, where the writers are really the people who are running things. That traditionally was not the case. You know, in general, writers were always sort of second or third class citizens compared to the producers and the directors. It's interesting, and I won't go on much farther about this, but you know, in the early '80s, the movie star became particularly the television movie star became particularly powerful. I think it was with Die Hard that Bruce Willis was paid more for his role in that movie than almost any you know, movie star, and it really shifted the power. I think during situations like this, the coronavirus or Writers Guild strikes, whenever there's a big shakeup, sometimes the power moves. But I'm not quite sure where it's going to go right now. I don't know, Terri, if you have any ideas about that.
Corporations probably, but remains to be seen. I think the power of the showrunner, especially the multi-hyphenate showrunner, is gonna be around for a while. I think there's really a vacuum of talent, of people who can write and create and produce and run shows. You know, these are franchises that can be worth billions of dollars to their parent companies. And when you're a showrunner on a show like that, you are the CEO of a humongous company. And, you know, a lot of these people started as writers who came out of a writer's program. They never went to business school, and they had to learn all that later on. So, you know, when you're thinking of your own education to become, if you're interested in being a showrunner, it's something to think about, is to diversify your education, to go outside of just screenwriting. You should be learning the business side. You should be learning distribution, all of it, financing, legal.
Yeah, days are gone. You can't just do one thing. You really, really need to become conversant in the language of all of the different, you know, skills that you're going to need.
Yeah.
You are your own best promoter.
So I'm going to answer a question. You know, we had someone inspire this whole AMA tonight, and his name is Garrett WB. And Garrett had asked our team in an email a couple of questions about the industry, and we thought, well, I'm happy to answer Garrett's questions, but these are probably questions that everybody wants to know. So one of his questions was, how do you deal with people not liking your work? How do you deal with the criticism? How do you take no for an answer gracefully, I think is probably the question. And it's hard. It's David mentioned that you have to be able to divorce yourself from your work. When you're hearing no's, it is not about you as a person. It is about the piece of work that's right in front of them. David and I are out with a script right now. It's going to every big producer in town. And we've gotten a lot of great feedback on the script, but there are some no's in there, and it's hard not to take it personally because we've worked very, very hard on it. The key is that there's always a reason for it. And you have to remember that it could be that they have a competing project. It could be that this is just not the type of material that company is interested in. It could be that they don't like the writing. It's not their style of writing. If you're an actor, you could just have the wrong look or the wrong voice or not enough social media followers, which, by the way, if you're an actor, you do need to be on social media. I think the key is taking the no as a point of, okay, how can I learn from this? What piece of information can I glean from this no? Not to turn it into a yes, because usually once people pass in entertainment, they've passed. But how can I take this piece of information that I've learned about this script or this project because of this no, and turn that around for my next project? David, do you have any other advice about that? I'm sure I could talk about this for a long time. I was an actor and a writer. I've done everything. I've gotten no's for everything in entertainment.
I will repeat what I said before. There are things you can control and things you can't. Sometimes it's helpful to ask, and I think it's okay to ask. Somebody, if they just say no, can you give me a little bit of feedback? If they're professional, they generally will. It's very hard to hear things in a vacuum. In other words, if you don't know the reason, if you don't know anything, they just said no, it can feel very hurtful. But again, you just need to sort of divorce yourself from that emotionally. And you've got that's just part of this industry. If you feel everything very deeply, then you're open to a world of hurt, because people will say no.
And the thing that one of my mentors told me is, Terri, you have to remember, it's not show friend, it's show business. So someone who you think might be your friend that you send your script to at a company and they call you back and say, oh, dude, it's not for me. It's just not on brand for us. The writing wasn't perfect. You just have to remember that's their business side. It's not because they don't appreciate you as a friend, but there are two different sides to this, and that's business. And it's not personal. It really is. People are trying to do their job, and a lot of times people forget that even though this is art, there is a structure behind everything that happens. So Garrett also asked, did any of us at Legion M attend film school, and do we think that was beneficial to our career? David, you want to talk first?
Sure. I attended the UCLA Producers Program. It was a very small program, and we had students from around the world. My teachers were people like Joe Roth, who helped run Disney, Arnold Rifkin, who ran William Morris. I mean, I think it's wonderful if you can afford it, and if you can, really apply yourself while you're in film school. it's like it's a business. You're learning a trade. So yeah, I think USC, NYU, AFI. I think there's a college in Chicago
UCLA,
that's very good.
FSU. There are so many good film schools out there.
There are
It just
also
killed me
great.
to say
Oh, really?
I'm a Gator.
Your game, yes. So yeah, no, I do think film school is great. It helps if you know exactly what you want to do before you go to film school, though. What area?
Right. Well, and Taylor brings up something we're talking to Taylor offline here. You know, the most important thing about film school is that it allows you to network with your peers, and a lot of times those peers will go on to do great things. I I did not go to film school. I went to theater school. I studied acting and directing for theater, specifically musical theater, and then went on to law school after that to learn entertainment law. And I do think it was very helpful, and I have a humongous amount of friends who I went to school with who are now professionals in the entertainment industry. And to this day, I still wish I had gone to film school, as much as I love the theater. So
There's
if you
still
can afford
time.
it, highly recommend. Highly, highly recommend. Ithaca is another good film school. There's so many good ones out there.
Oh, it's Columbia College in Chicago. That's it.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's good. Let's see. Another question is, what are some of the and we're at time. I'm happy to keep going for another 15 minutes, David. Are you happy? Because we have a few more questions.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, by the way, not all of our colleagues went to film school. You know, Jeff Annison is a mechanical engineer. I think Paul, although he was a screenwriting minor, I think. Paul, I think, studied advertising. Is that right, David? I'm going to get it all wrong.
Marketing.
Yeah.
He studied marketing and advertising.
Yeah, and Michelle did not go to film school. So there are lots of ways into the industry. Okay, so let's talk very, very briefly about some of the reasons why an old series or film cannot be rebooted or remade. And let's use Firefly as the example, since that was our April Fool's joke yesterday. And anyone who saw our April Fool's joke and still thinks that we're doing Firefly as our next project, please go watch the video. And we're sorry we pulled one over on you. But there are oftentimes reasons, and David, interrupt me at any time. It could be timing. It could be money. It could be that the financials of the series don't make sense in today's marketplace. It could be that the creator of the series doesn't want to do it anymore. It could be that the cast has moved on and has said we're not coming back, or one member of the cast has said we're not coming back. There are about as many ways not to get a television series done as there are to get a series done. And they all, they all matter. Yeah, David.
I mean, one of the biggest things I think that prevents a lot of these things from happening is when you say a certain actor doesn't want to do it, a lot of people, once they've been in a series and done something, they've done it. And they don't necessarily want to go back to that character. That was the case with Patrick Stewart up until very recently. They had asked him to play Jean-Luc Picard many times, and he turned them down. But this time, they came up with an idea that he considered to be fresh enough to bring him back. So, all you can do with reboots and remakes is, you try to see whether you can pull the old team together. Or sometimes, in the case of reboots, sometimes they happen a little bit too soon. A lot of people argue that Hellboy should not have been rebooted as quickly as it was. And, I think the number of people who went to see it may have bared that out.
Yep. Okay, so what are some of the challenges to overcome in getting a series picked up? Well, when you're packaging a series, one of the most important things, I mean, there are a lot of important things to consider. Is it based on underlying material? Where does it fit in the ecosystem in terms of tone? Is it a network show? Is it a cable show? Is it a streamer? I think one of the most important elements that buyers ask is who is your showrunner? In other words, who is the CEO of the series who's going to create the pilot and get it booted up and get it made in the best way possible? So the biggest challenge to selling a series for most people is that they lack a showrunner. And sometimes if they don't have credits themselves, networks and studios, if they can't see a path forward with one of their own showrunners that they already have a deal with, they'll pass because they have no way to ensure that the project will get made properly. So that's one of the challenges that I find. Other challenges are things like the series doesn't have enough legs, meaning you can't get as many episodes out of this idea as you think you can. Another challenge might be that there's a competing series in development at another buyer. Sometimes series are just too expensive to produce. There are very specific parameters that buyers have in order to produce series. And some of them can only produce series that are $3 million an episode, and others can only produce at $1.5 million an episode. And others, like HBO, can spend a lot more because, they're HBO. So if you're trying to sell... Yeah. So if you're trying to sell a series that's going to cost $8 million an episode, to a place that only ever spends $1.5 million an episode, you're fighting a losing battle right there. So you just have to be aware of kind of the marketplace. I think that's the bottom line. David, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. You make a good point. I mean, at the end of the day, how much you know about the marketplace is as important as the material that you have. You can have the best material in the world, and if the marketplace, doesn't allow for it, you're just going to be very frustrated. So, yeah, that's quite a tough series of challenges to get a series picked up.
Yeah. Okay, we have 2 more questions here so far. Unless there are any more online, feel free to post your questions. We'll stay on for another 10 minutes. If my show does get picked up, how much control should I expect to have in the creative process moving forward? That entirely depends on who you are and what your role on the show is. So if you are, I don't know, J.K. Rowling or George R.R. Martin, you might have one level of creative control. If you are a brand new writer with a great idea that a showrunner said, I'll help you get this made, you're not going to have much control at all.
Nope.
So I think the moral, the bottom line of a question like that is these shows cost many, many millions of dollars to produce. And even if you're the creator of the show, you are expendable because there are other people who can do the job. And you just have to be aware when you're doing your deal, if that's a concern of yours, that you've built some safety precautions into your deal where, if they don't want you participating as a writer anymore, they have to pay you, as a consultant or, have a good lawyer.
Yeah, have a really good lawyer. Even if you have a really good lawyer, you literally you only have as much power as whatever the last deal that you negotiated. So when you're getting started, when I got into the Writers Guild, I was only able to negotiate, Writers Guild minimum, even though I knew they really, really liked it. They just said, take it or leave it. And that was that. So until you get an established price for your time and your efforts, it will be very difficult to have too much, to have a lot of creative control. But as you move along, you'll get more and more.
And if you want creative control over something, the best way to do it is shoot it yourself.
Make a
you
movie.
have a film studio in your pocket. So Garrett has one more question. How would one obtain a job at Legion M? That's a great question, Garrett. David, I feel like I'm manipulating the whole conversation because of this.
No, it's all right. I mean, we literally, unless I'm wrong, we do have a job board when jobs come up. It's kind of an interesting question given the current state of affairs in the world. I'm like, having a job at all is pretty amazing anywhere. I think the best thing to do, again, for getting a job anywhere, is to provide some kind of value. There have been a number of volunteers who just, I have to tell you, I mean, I was just blown away by some of the people involved in the Legion, and their ability to kind of anticipate needs and to help get things done when we're at our various pop culture events, has led to some of them, getting part-time positions. So I don't know what to tell you specifically, but I would say be in touch, be a person who supports the Legion and wants to find ways for us to succeed. And that would be one way that I would approach it. What about you, Terri?
Yeah. When we hire, we often will post that job online, and, we encourage Legion M members and investors to apply. Some of the best ways to ensure that you would be in the running for Legion M in particular is to hone your writing skills. We are a company that really appreciates great communicators. Most of the open jobs that we've had in the past are jobs that require people to write, whether it's emails or social media posts or letters. So if you feel like your writing skills might not be completely 100% up to snuff with the best grammar and the best, terminology, my recommendation to you would be to practice and hone those writing skills, because we do test that. In fact, when Taylor got his job as head of social media, we gave him a test and he had to complete it, and he killed it. But there were a lot of people who did not kill it. And I know that we have people who help us answer emails, and they were also given a test. And we determined whether or not that they could be right for the job based on how they performed on the test. So keep your eyes peeled for openings. We are not hiring right now. I don't know that we'll be hiring anytime in the near future. But if and when we do, we will usually post that position and let everybody know that it's available for them to apply. All right. That was the last question. Whoop, whoop. I'm so nerdy.
I hope you guys all enjoyed this.
Yeah, I hope we answered everyone's questions. David and I are happy to do another one of these in a couple of weeks if we didn't. Let us know how you feel about this AMA. Sorry we're so pixelated. But feel free to reach out and ask us any other questions in the meantime. And we hope everyone is staying safe, sane, and healthy.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.